Hi there. I like to use beads on quilts. I often make wall quilts that are connected with beads, and I call them my Presto links quilts. So here is the first Presto link quilt that I made. It's a flower, it's appliqued, it's done in 3 pieces, and then you hook them together with beads. The same technique is used on the Presto Link birdhouse quilt. Flower, 3 pieces connected with beads, and this time we have a different thing. We have birds and a birdhouse. This is another Presto Link birdhouse. Bigger beads, but beads are connecting. I decided to make a pieced Presto Link quilt recently, and the newest one is going to be called Presto Link Stars and Stripes. So here's a new quilt, and I made it, but if you'll notice, the red and white stripe section is a piece of fabric that I found that I could cut into the block that I needed. Well, I decided that it was too, if I write a pattern, maybe not everyone could find a striped red and white stripe. So I made this Presto Link quilt. And I am getting ready today to put the beads in between the sections of this quilt. Before I do that, I thought I would show you how I get those beads in there. I think a lot of people think it's really a tricky thing. It isn't. It's very easy. Once I have the pieces done, the pieces are 3 different sections, they're done, they're ready. I lay them on my cutting table, and I use my big ruler, and I lay it on one end, and then I move in, and mark with now on this guy, I use this white marking pen. Because this is a dark fabric. If this were a lighter fabric, I would probably use a water-soluble pen. But I just mark a line right at the half-inch mark, and then I mark a line up here at the half-inch mark. And then I move over and make a second mark. So these have all been marked so that this line matches here, this line matches there, and they are ready for the beading process. Before I bead, I also, if there's any other beads or buttons to attach to the quilt, I put them on first. So on the bottom section of the Presto Links quilts, there are usually 3 different little prairie points, and I put buttons those. So those I've attached already. It's often easier to attach all your stuff before you try to put things together. So today I'm ready to bead, and I normally start with the beading. I start with the top 2 sections, and I use I choose beads. It doesn't matter what kind of beads you use, as long as the beads are the color that you want, and as long as they are the same size. Some bead tubes will have, like these are very, very nice beads, but some of them are, well, that's not it. Some beads I find, they are like, one is one size and one is another size. You need to have beads that are the same size, because they're going to be what I call working beads. And they don't work as well together if you have one big one and then a small one, and then over here a little, 2 littles. It just doesn't work. So it doesn't matter as long as you have the same size beads. And I just pick a color of what I have or what I think will go nice. And then I use a thread that is, this is an old one, very old. In fact, I think it looks like it was 30 cents. That's an old thread. I don't use it for anything else except it's called an extra strong thread. So look at your store, get an extra strong thread. This is a cotton thread, maybe even a buttonhole type thread. And I pour the beads into a little cup next to me. And then I will show you how I do this. I don't know how well you can see, but I can put the camera closer. I first of all take my thread or my needle and go up from the back so I can hide this knot in the back fabric. And sometimes it's not easy. And if it doesn't pop through there, we'll just cut it off and we'll just let it go for right now. I mean, we'll cut off the tail because nobody's going to notice it anyway. Usually, I try to pop it through. And then I pull up. I'm going to make a stitch right back here. Okay. And now I'm going to take, these are blue beads, they're various colors, but I put 2 on my needle, pull them down, and then I am going to stitch right through the top of the second one. I'm going to pull that through. And I think usually I use a double thread, which I do not have. So that might be not the best. But then I go right back through those 2 beads. Pull them up. I gotta move them over here where I can get to them. All right, and then take the needle, go right in here. And I really think I better put, I'm worried that this 2 little, well, we'll see. If I were you, I think I would do a double thread. And when I thread my needle next, I may do that. Now, I sneak my needle right through this fabric here. So it's in the seam, buried in there. And then put 2 more beads on. 1, 2, pull them down, take them, and just take a stitch at the top of the next mark. Go right back up through those 2 beads and into the top. A lot of times I have to flip this over so that I can see. So now I've got 2 beads there. Again, I am going to slide the needle through till I get to the next mark. It's much more helpful if you can do this like I'm doing it on some sort of a flat table, because if you try to do this in your lap, things get all whopper-jawed. That's a fancy word for saying they get out of order. So I'm going to go ahead and do 1 or 2 more, and when I get 3 or 4 bead strands on here, I usually make a little knot in the back at the top. That way, I think I'll do it right now. See, I've got 3 on, so that's not very many, but at least if you have I can put a little knot right back here. Nobody will know, but at least if something were to happen and one of the threads would get torn or broken, at least there would only be 3 or 4 beads that are loose. And you can still just keep going right on through there to your next bead string. So here's 3 beads done. And I'm going to go ahead and go right through, keep going down to here. I try to make sure that the beads are, you know, lining up nicely, but you really can't be extra perfect. If you look at this, for example, there's a little bit sticking out here and a little bit sticking there. And especially if you have a curved edge, it's really kind of tricky trying to get. So I decided, you know, it is what it is. It's fine. The beads are part of it and they make it nice and different. So enjoy adding a few beads to some of your quilt projects. This pattern will be out very soon. This is called Presto Length Stars and Stripes. And it's a piece pattern, so there's no applique, only just adding a few beads.